Hey there, my name is Riley, and today we'll be taking a look at Splinter Cell. We're going all the way back to the OG 2002, Splinter Cell. No other random buzzwords in the title like Mayhem Thesis or Pandora's Yesterday, just Splinter Cell. The one that started it all. This series has been floating around on my backlog for quite a while now, and over the next couple months I'm going to be playing through all the titles in this series and just making some videos kind of talking about what I thought and my experience overall. Now, I have a very fond memory of Splinter Cell Chaos Theory as a kid. There was one specific mission, I think it was in like New York City streets or something, and I was really weird about it. I just play that mission over and over again for whatever reason, the weird way kids do. And so this series does hold a very dear place in my heart, despite Chaos Theory really being the only title I've played any decent amount of. So anyway, let's get right into it and we'll talk about my experience.
Go ahead.
Hold that. Christ, this is spooky.
What's that?
Grim's sticking wires in your head, man.
I just need to sync the encryption signature between his subdermals and Fort Meade.
Don't like that.
I know. It's for after we land. You better hurry up, Grim. We touch down in Georgia in 15.
I'm already done. Lambert? Hey, Irving, do you read me?
Tell her I read her. He reads you.
Good. You ready to get to work?
I'd feel better if I knew what was going on.
You know what you need to. The CIA lost a mole inside Georgian President Combay Nicoladzi's cabinet. Her name is Alice Madison. They sent in Agent William Robert Blaustein to find her and lost him too.
Are we working with the CIA's cooperation?
Blaustein is outfitted with subdermals just like yours. That'll be your best lead to find him.
You didn't answer my question.
We'll tell you what you need to know. You're not out there alone, Fisher. Through me, you're attached to a dozen of the best NSA minds we have. There are political complexities with Georgia you'd need a week to understand.
I've just about memorized the speech, Lambert.
Well, start believing it. This is Third Echelon's maiden voyage, and we need it to go smooth as butter. You're about to touch down in Georgia. Get ready.
So like I mentioned before, I do have a pretty limited amount of playtime in Splinter Cell overall, only really touching Chaos Theory in a decent amount. So the OG Splinter Cell I never played in my life, so this video is really going to come from an unbiased viewpoint. It's not going to be clouded by nostalgia goggles and all that stuff. This is coming from just a 2022 viewpoint. Does the game hold up by today's standards? But before we delve into my personal experience, I'll just go over some of the little, history tidbits for this game. So it's of course developed by Ubisoft and endorsed by Tom Clancy. You play as Sam Fisher, or just a little sidebar here, like I named him in my playthrough, Poop. I played the PC port for this game, and it lets you save manually whenever you want, but to do that, it makes you type in your character name, and I was like, yeah, Poop's a nice little nugget of a word. So anyway, Sam here is an NSA Black Ops agent, and the game itself was built in Unreal Engine 2. That's quite the throwback considering in 2022 we're now getting into Unreal Engine 5. And one thing I learned that I wasn't actually aware of, it drew its original inspiration from the Metal Gear franchise, which is pretty cool. When it originally launched, it was actually an Xbox exclusive. I do remember that it was a pretty big selling title for the Xbox. This was back in the day, before when Microsoft actually knew how to push console sales. But again, 20 years later, nothing's really changed. After about a year, it was ported to all the other consoles, GameCube, PS2, so it was a limited time release. And then they even did some weird ports where they made like a weird 2D version of the game for the Game Boy Advance and the N-Gage, because who had an N-Gage, right? And for whatever reason, in this game again came out in 2002, for whatever reason in 2008, they made a mobile phone port because for whatever reason Ubisoft was really keen on putting a splinter in your cell. Yeah, I made that joke. But back in 2002, this was quite the head turner of a game. I mean, stealth was relatively an untouched idea in general, and stealth games were pretty far and few in between, so for how quality this game was, a lot of people picked it up. And it was, it was a console seller at the time. In fact, on the original Xbox version, it managed to get as high as a 93 out of 100 in review scores. With the weird 2D versions for like the Game Boy and the N-Gage getting a little bit of a colder reception, they got about a 77 out of 100, but that's, honestly a lot higher than I was expecting to see, because I don't even know how you would make Splinter Cell a 2D game. It's such a weird idea to me. So, Splinter Cell, I won't go too deep into the plot of the game, because honestly, it's just kind of a cookie cutter idea. It's like every other military game out there. Sam, a former Navy SEAL, gets recruited to the NSA's Black Ops program called 3rd Echelon, and is originally sent to Georgia. And no, I'm not talking about the state Georgia, I'm talking about the little wart of a country on the bottom of Russia, also called Georgia, that 99% of the population forgets even exists. And he is tasked with finding 2 missing CIA agents. Anyway, this devolves into a coup, and Georgia getting a new crazy president who basically wants to kill the USA because they won't let him war crime in peace. It's so ridiculous. He's killing his population and, genocide and ethnic cleansing, and the US just won't let it happen. It's so ridiculous, so he has to nuke them. And a typical World War III plot wouldn't be complete unless China were involved, so you do a couple of missions over there with the Chinese embassy and all that stuff. Now, again, I'm not going to spoil any of the specifics with the story itself, because Ubisoft is actually in the process of making a full remake of this game. If I had to guess, it's probably going to come out this year in 2022. Cool little 20-year anniversary thing. And from what I've been hearing, it is a full remake from the ground up, so I'm looking forward to it personally. But remake aside, for this game being 20 years old from 2002, it holds up a lot better than I was expecting. I don't say that often for old games. If you know me, I roast old games. I am not a huge fan. Even when nostalgia is involved, it's still really hard to go back to these old titles. They don't age very well. That being said though, Cell Splinter 2002 does have some areas it has not aged very well in, but they are pretty easy to overlook for how many things this game actually does pretty well. It has a dynamic light system, which back in 2002 was crazy. I think they actually had to recode the Unreal Engine 2 to make this even work. But basically your character interacts with the light in the environment, and you have a little light meter as well. And basically, however close you are to a light source increases or decreases your visibility bar, which of course makes it easier or harder to hide from an enemy. Now, this wasn't a completely fleshed out idea. When I was doing my playthrough, there was multiple times I'd be in complete darkness, or an enemy would see me through a wall. It was kind of ridiculous. AI back in the day were very talented, but again, when it comes to enemies seeing you through with just vision that they shouldn't, just super vision, it was kind of ridiculous. There was one section that was was kind of ridiculous. It was in the basement of the Russian area or something. There was an entire freezer section. There was a ton of fog in there, and you couldn't see a foot in front of you unless you used your thermal vision, which I appreciated because I think this was the only time in the whole game that you really had to use thermal. So it was a nice little change of pace. Anyway, despite the fog being ridiculously thick, for whatever reason, the AI could still see you perfectly well. You'd be on the other side of the room and they'd see you. It was really stupid. And I checked their bodies, none of them had thermal vision. They didn't have any kind of goggles on or anything, so I think it was just a thing where they didn't really think the coding out on that mission. I don't know. But anyway, that would have been a really annoying area if it wasn't for the fact there was a ton of places to hide. But with that being said, the weirdness with the AI's supervision, it was a kind of a minor inconvenience at the end of the day. Again, you would fail a mission, but the game does have quick save, so I got into the habit of saving really often, so whenever this jank happened with the vision, I just was like, whatever, I'll just reload 2 seconds ago. But a great feature the game does have is the ability to climb on basically any surface, giving the levels a lot of different ways you can complete them, and adds like a level and depth of strategy. Now, by today's standards, the ability to climb on things is kind of a given and it's taken for granted, but you gotta take into consideration that this game was made in 2002. Assassin's Creed 1 is the game that really set the standard for platforming and climbing on buildings and stuff like that, and that came out in 2007, so half a decade before that. So for what it has in it, it is like, it has some impressive mechanics for the time. And further towards environmental interactivity, you can even shoot out and destroy a lot of light sources. There's a couple that you can't, like streetlights and stuff like that, or they might have like a metal grate over them, but the vast majority of light sources can be destroyed to make it easier to sneak through areas. And the enemies even react to changes in light, whether it's you flicking a switch and turning it off, or actually destroying the light source. They will react to that, which adds another level to, you can like lure people out, and it's really nice to see them putting that level of thought into the game in 2002. But while we are on the topic of shooting things, I'm going to mention, I think, my biggest gripe with Cell Splinter 2002 Sam, and that is the gunplay. It is terrible by today's standards. I mean, funny enough, it's so bad that it adds another level of like built-in difficulty to the game. I mean, there were multiple times I'd be standing dead still, like a foot away from a light source, and shoot it, and I would hit the wall like 4 feet to the right. It was the stupidest thing. They have like gun sway and everything in the game, but it's so ridiculous that it's, I couldn't do it. It's terrible. So I actually rarely ended up using the guns in this game, whether it was the pistol or the assault rifle, because of how inaccurate they were. It was just, I mean, you'd go to shoot someone and you'd shoot their shoulder or something and then set off an alarm. It was really dumb, and it just made the game harder than it had to be. I think the only thing I really used the guns for very much was the attachments, and for whatever reason, the attachments had much better accuracy than the actual guns themselves, which makes no sense. So again, the gunplay wasn't a big factor in this for me because I could stealth my way through a lot of things and just grab people, knock them out. Sadly though, the game does put in a couple of action sequences that are forcing you to not stealth, and those were terrible. They really shined a light on how bad the gunplay was in this, because you're forced to shoot the people and kill them, and you use so many bullets to do it. Even if you're aiming right at them, it's terrible. Now again, I played the PC port of this game that does have a built-in quick save, so you can save literally whenever you want. So if it wasn't for that, I think these action sequences would have been a lot more annoying than they were. Whenever I got to one, I would just save right beforehand, so if I died from, some stupidity, I would just be able to reload the game 2 seconds beforehand. If it wasn't for that, I probably would have spent 5 hours on these action sequences just beating my head against the wall trying to get through them, because it was terrible. In the final level of the game, you're actually in a library, and an alarm triggers. You have no way to stop it from triggering, and 4 guys come into the library. There's a ton of light in there that you can't really destroy, at least not in the time frame that they charge you. So you're forced to fight these 4 guys basically in the open, so you have to use your guns. I kid you not, I used about 60 bullets and a grenade to kill them, and I definitely tried more than once. It was a terrible experience. And like I said before, if I didn't have quick save, if I had to actually run through the entire level to get back there and try again, I probably would have quit after my 3rd try, because that would have been awful. But at the end of the day, what I like to ask is, did I have fun? That's the point of video games after all. Well, video games maybe except for League of Legends. Anyway, despite the very finicky AI and the very poo-poo gunplay, yeah, I have to say, I think I enjoyed my time with Sam the Fisher. I explored some very well done levels considering 2002 limitations. The overall storyline is coherent and well fleshed out for, what it is, despite it being a little cookie cutter. And planning out your way to tackle levels as you go was a blast, and it always had me thinking outside of the box, which I really appreciate with any kind of stealth game. So by 2022 standards, I would have to rate the original Splinter Cell 7 out of 10 splinters. adventures, with a little bit of an asterisk. Again, I played the PC port, I said this a couple of times, but if this game did not have quick save, this would have been a very different rating and different review overall. The game itself has very limited autosave. I mean, every level was about 2 hours long if you didn't know what you were doing, and I think the majority of levels, there's only about 2 to 3 spots that it autosaves in, so if I didn't have the ability to manually save in this game, I probably would have rated it about a 4 out of 10, because the flaws that the game has, you know, the bad AI, the terrible gunplay, they would have really been more aggravating than they were if I had to spend hours on end replaying sections of the game just because, you know, the AI was badly coded or whatever. But, you know, asterisk aside, 7 out of 10 Splinters, it was a pretty fun experience, and I'm going to be moving on to Pandora tomorrow. See how that game holds up as well. Anyway, if you did manage to get to this part of the video, I very much thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And with everything we talked about today, I would love to hear your comments down below, what you think of the original Splinter Cell, if you enjoy your experience when you play it, if you ever go back to it, if you played it in the past. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. We do a variety of gaming content on my channel, just kind of going through my backlog and then making videos talking about the games and my experience, all that stuff. But anyway, thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.